Welcome back, everyone, to You Are Divinely Made with Lance and Patty Lamans. Lance is going to give you an overview of Chapter 7, and the title is I Am Law. Lance, what is the law?
What is the law? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about.
And then you'll read this passage.
Okay, so we'll start off. First off, aloha. Now, aloha is we love you, but we love you whether you're coming or going. Whether you're coming this way or going that way, we love you. And that is aloha.
Thank you, Lenaki.
Pakani, you're welcome. But now this is chapter 7, and 7 spiritually means all or the complete. Just like all 7 notes make up music. There are 7 aspects of what we call music. And in those 7 aspects is built in infinity. There are an infinite number of ways to present music based on 7 notes which make the complete allness of music. It's the same with colors, right? So the 7 colors make up all of what color is, white. And in that white is all the 7 colors. 7. So 7 represents the allness, like the 7 letters to the churches. That is, it represents all the aspects that complete your spiritual journey. 7 heads of the dragon. 7 heads of the dragon, it represents all the different aspects of the dragon, and that is all of the dragon. It's not just 7, just like in the notes, you have half notes, and the mixture of all the different notes, the mixture of all the different colors becomes infinity, becomes the allness of it, and all of creation. And so we're on chapter 7. And this is the opening statement. The great divine I am within myself, within all my brothers and sisters, is the only law operating. It is infinite, omnipresent law operating in and out of all space, out of all time. It brings only the divine idea into expression. All else is false deception. Okay, so now I am law. I am not the law. It's not I am the law. It's I am law. And what that means is that God's law, which is the law of creation, which embodies God's signature of life, which means it embodies his perfect idea of what creation is and what our individual idea of life is, meaning God's individual idea of our life. And life, this life that we are, when we say, I am alive, where is that? What is that? What is life? And life is law. Life is law in expression. And that is there always. Now, as that life moves through our soul, our interpretation of that life becomes our experience. And we are under God's law, and that is our law. However, our consciousness is the law of our experience, what we experience. So let us start to analyze this. As a human being, we're under the law of the world because we accept this idea that we live in a material universe, a universe made up of matter. And that idea then comes with all the laws that make that possible. And so as human beings, we fall under those laws, and we are bound by those laws. So the laws of birth, the laws of growth, the laws of things like gravity, the laws of chemical reactions, all these are material laws. The laws of movement, of centrifugal force, etc., etc. Now, those are not real laws. Those are laws that the world proclaims. And we're bound by those laws as long as we accept the idea that we live in a material universe and that we have physical bodies. So it is us, not the world, but our individual being that sets the laws of our experience in motion. Now, we haven't realized this. We haven't understood what we are and how we operate, what our soul is, and what its purpose is. And so we just accepted what the world has been telling us, that we live in a material universe, in a physical body, and we are limited in what we can do. There are certain things we can do, but there's a lot of things we can't do, according to the world. And we're bound by that as long as we accept the premise that this is a material universe. Now, in reality, we are the law of our experience. But it doesn't come from this outward expression, this form, the form that I call my body, cannot create laws. My mind, my thinking mind, my concepts about life cannot create laws. The mind is not a power. The physical body is not a power. And it's not a law unto itself. It follows the law of our being. Now, our being is back behind this mind and this body, and even our feelings. And so we have to understand that this is not about trying to use the mind to create a situation for our personal benefit. That does not create a law that you will live under. If you're going in that direction, and if you believe that, you will fall under the laws of the world. And not by the world, I mean this world that the world claims is a material world. You might be able to have some success in using the mind and using the body to accomplish, but it's going to be limited. And in the end, it will always fail because death is its outcome. Because the law of materialism is we're born, we live, and we die. And so in the end, we're dead. And all that we tried to accomplish dies with us when we're working with the mind and the body to try and accomplish. So the first thing we have to do is to realize I am not the body. I am an individual expression of God. I am not the mind. I'm not the thinking mind. I am divine mind. I am the mind of God expressing as individual mind. I am behind the thinking mind. And so behind that is my feelings, where I feel and what I feel about the world. But I am not the feelings. I feel, therefore I am not feelings. I am the one that is doing the feeling, so I am not the feeling itself. I am the one who is thinking, so I am not the thoughts. I am the one who is acting in my body, but I am acting, so I am not the action itself. I am the one using the body to act. And this I that I am is behind all these outer expressions called feelings, mind, and body and world. And that is the I that is law. That I is the law of your being. And that I is your consciousness, is your pure consciousness. And that consciousness then is the window for God's creation. which is your innermost being. That God is your innermost being, and it moves through your consciousness to show its creation and to experience, so you as an individual expression of God can experience that creation. Now, the soul can interpret what life is. The soul has what we call free choice or free will. And in that, you and I are able to interpret what life is. Now, since we came into this world, we've been listening to what the world claims life is. And so it hasn't really been our interpretation. It's been the world's interpretation of what life is. And that became the law of our existence. And that's the reason we decay and die. It's only because we've been accepting the world as if the world knew what it was. And that in turn has put us under the laws of the world. And we are bound by those laws as long as we accept it. And I mean accept it in our consciousness, not mentally, not just think, oh, I don't accept this anymore. That's a good start, but that's not going to accomplish it. It's not going to set in motion a new law for you, which you are able to do because you have free will and you are the Son of God and you are the law of your own being. So when we withdraw and start working our existence from this I that I am, from back behind, then that becomes the law of our existence. So because we've been under the law of time, which is part of the mortal concept of the world claims that time is passing, and so we fall under the law of time passing, which means that what I did yesterday caused my today. And what I do today causes my tomorrow. And with that, there is all these other expressions of that law. For instance, if you eat certain types of food, they will have either a good reaction in your body, or other foods may have a bad reaction in your body. That is not the truth about your body. Your body doesn't react to food. It doesn't matter what you eat, whether it's good or bad, that has no effect on your body. What does have effect on your body is your consciousness. And when your consciousness is accepting the world ideas, then that puts in motion those laws, and then you're bound by those laws. But it's not those material laws that are binding you. It's your acceptance of those laws that is binding you, because your consciousness is the determining factor of your life.
Is that why you always say that your acceptance of what you accept becomes your belief? And then your belief makes up your personal law, code of laws.
That's right. Yes. So let me try and explain that. What we accept is what we believe. We believe, if we believe we live in a material universe or in a physical body, then we will accept that idea. And really, to backtrack it, it's really the world is telling us that's what it is, and then our acceptance of it becomes our belief that it's true. I believe that's how Pakile put it. And so it's back in your consciousness where it all begins. Now, because we're ingrained in this passing of time, at first, when we try and set new laws in motion, it oftentimes takes time. And that is only because of our own acceptance and belief that time exists. In reality, there is no time. There is only this eternal moment. What is the difference? The difference is that in the eternal moment, all causes and all laws come out from within your own being, and they are the source and cause of your experience. Now, that's true whether you believe it or not. It's true. But if you don't accept it and believe it, it won't act in your world as it was meant to act. In other words, you'll still be under the law of time. And so whatever you try and accomplish will take time, as long as you are accepting time as reality. When you accept and believe in your timeless self, your innermost self, then everything you accomplish, everything you set in motion is not bound by time. It can then come into manifestation right away, or when it is the perfect time for it. So when we begin this new process of understanding I am the law of my being, I am law, and whatever I believe I am becomes the law of my experience. We have to be patient with that, because we have to understand we have been accepting mortal laws for so long that we're not just able to pull out of it right away. So it takes effort, it takes persistence, it takes patience. But let us know that, so it becomes what we believe we are. Our interpretation of life becomes our desires. It becomes what we want. And maybe we want to have a good business, a thriving business, maybe a particular type of business. And because our belief then is that we can be prosperous. And the world tells us we have to earn prosperity, that we have to get prosperity, that prosperity's out in the world somewhere. And so as long as we accept that, we're going to be bound by that. We're going to be bound by that law until we set in motion a new law that says, I am success. I am that which I desire. Now, maybe you desire to be enlightened. Well, that's your destiny. Because now, if that's really what you desire, then that's what you're going to move towards. And maybe that won't happen in this lifetime. Maybe it'll take a couple of lifetimes to get to it. Not because God is putting the stalls on you, not because God doesn't want to give it to you right now. God is giving it to you right now. But because we have set in motion these laws of materialism, these laws of passing time, these laws of space that claim if there's distance, and if I want to go to the moon, it's going to take 10 days to get there, or whatever it takes, then I'm bound by that law. But once I release myself from these outer laws and set in motion new laws, it says, I want to walk on the moon tonight. And I can walk on the moon tonight. I can do whatever I want to do. God gave me free will, and it comes without limitation. But I have to set that law in motion. I have to make that law begin. And I do that by changing who I am. And that starts back in the soul. It cannot be done through thinking it. Who, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit to their stature. Right? That's what Jesus said. And that won't do it. It won't. You'll still be under the same law that you've been accepting. And however much that law allows you to accomplish with your mind, then you can accomplish that with your mind. Until you set in motion from your soul and you go even beyond believing to knowing. I know I am law. I know I am God's child. I know I am limitless. I know I am timeless. Now we can start that by thinking it, but we have to then move back to feeling it. Do you feel that is true? That I am the law of my own being? That God has given me all that I ever need to accomplish anything I want to accomplish? When you feel the truth of that, now you're moving back out of the thoughts, but having an effect on the thoughts. When you can feel it and then say it, when you feel, I am prosperous, I am success, because God is success and God is my being, all of my being, then that will begin to set that in motion. But then there's another part. You have to go behind a feeling to knowing. Not just feeling it. Now I know it, and that feels it, and then the thinking of it, now you're starting to set it in motion. But it's also your attitude towards life, because what you accept, what you know to be true, becomes your attitude towards the world. And that really, when you know it, then you set it in motion. I know I am success. Now, it's not us that does it. It's this inner God coming through our soul that has all the intelligence and all the activity and all the power to make it happen, to make whatever direction I go in to come alive. It is my life. It is your life. It is everyone's life. And it's not given in portions. God doesn't give a little to one person and a lot to another person. It seems that way humanly, but that has to do with our consciousness, what we're accepting in our consciousness, and how that becomes the law of our experience. The law that we call our world, the world we live in. And so in reality, we can accomplish anything, but that will not operate until we know it's true. And when we know it's true, it becomes the law. And then we begin to feel it. We begin to believe it, and then we feel it, and then we think it, and then our body begins to act in alignment with all that. And our actions become the world that we experience.
Is that what you're referring to in the signature of life?
Yes, that is the signature of life. That is this inner God, which God himself individualizes as individual being at every point in infinite creation. And in that is the perfect divine idea of each individual expression of God. And that's what we call the signature of life. And that is the true law of life. God is law. And it is unchangeable. But that law gives us free will. So it might seem contradictory, but it's not. We have that law with us, which is the law of perfection, and it will come through and be the perfection of our life when we stop putting our own interpretation on it. When we're able to go back behind our soul and rest in the great infinite silence and look out at the world from that point, then that perfection, without having another interpretation about it, then that law becomes and appears outwardly as perfect life. And that is the signature of life. Now, that signature of life is infinite. So we have to understand our free will allows us to experience whatever part of that infinite divine idea of us that we want to experience. That's up to us. That's for us to decide. Maybe we want a good relationship. Maybe we want more activity. Maybe we want to walk in the mountains or swim in the ocean. Whatever it is that we want, we can accomplish by letting this inner signature of life accomplish it for us by setting the law of our knowing into action.
And when you talk about the knowing, you're talking about the act of discernment. Is there some type of a way of knowing whether or not you are completely conducting your own set of laws or destiny, or if you have succumbed to world mind a little bit, maybe through the subconscious? And does it matter which of you is listening as far as the invisible spiritual self? Is there a test? That came from world mind.
Well,
just practice.
There is a couple things. For one, if it's temporary, you know it's coming from the world. God's creation is ever changing, but it's also ever renewed. It's ever replenished. And so it is a fine line. It's not an easy discernment, but so it takes practice to notice. But all you have to do is look at the world you're living in, and you can understand that that really isn't coming from the world. That's coming from you because you may have accepted what the world was telling you, but you're the one that set it in motion. And so if there's limitation in your world, it's because you allowed that limitation through knowing that limitation exists or believing that limitation exists. When you begin to live in your soul outside the mind and body and begin to listen to what is within you, you begin to hear the truth about life. The true principles of life will begin to reveal themselves to you. And it is revealed to each individual in its own unique way, adapted for that individual consciousness, so that individual consciousness can understand it. And that then that revelation then shows you that we are liberated beings. We think about becoming liberated. In reality, we're already liberated because we have free will. And we have just been misusing that liberty, unknowingly causing our own limitations and our own suffering by putting in motion laws that we, through what we believe is true. And this intelligence and activity of life will accomplish that for you. It will put those laws in motion for you, even though they seem destructive. But you have to understand, to the spirit, they're not destructive, because the spirit knows your eternal self cannot be destructed, cannot be destroyed, cannot be harmed in any way. Your soul is invisible and untouchable by anything material, by any form at all. And when you begin to understand that form is really spiritual form, it's not material form. There is no material form. That is just the experience that you put in motion, and that this inner spirit of yours works with you to do whatever way you decide to go. And if you decide to go into the material world and live with your attention out in the world, then it will produce that world for you, but that will come with laws that will bind you, because that's what a material world is. That's what an outer world is without the inner source. So we begin setting in motion our new self with new laws. We realize now that I am law. I decide what I am. And that becomes the law of my experience. The moment you know that truth, it begins to change all these outer experiences. But at first, it's going to seem like you don't notice any change, or you notice very little change. And that's only because our consciousness is so entrenched in the human belief that we're in physical bodies and we have to deal with a world outside of ourselves. And so we don't realize that we're the ones that have put the laws in effect for our world. And that's the only reason that we're having to deal with this world out there, is because that was our belief about the world. And that came mainly from what the world told us what we were. The world, all our whole life, has been telling us we're a body and a mind. And that has locked us into that, and that's where our attention has been. And so that's what put us under there. So that's why it takes time. So that's why you need patience. Know that it's operating. If you don't know it's operating, if you think you can do this by yourself, you're wrong. You have to understand it's the Spirit of God in you that's doing the work, that is setting the law in motion according to what your desire is. And your desire may not come to fruition for another lifetime. Maybe it's going to take 100 years or 1,000 years. It depends on your own state of consciousness and how much you can free yourself from these other laws that you yourself have put in motion unknowingly.
You said it very simply right here.
Uh-huh.
Life is so simple, so easy. Tell your world what it is with everything you know. You have, and let it unfold. This is an
That's a
beautiful
perfect statement.
that, and also
Tell your world what it is.
tell your
You
world
tell your world what it
what it
is.
and you draw on that knowing, that inner knowing,
And you
which is
draw
your
on the inner knowing that comes from that inner voice from within you that reveals itself, what the real truth is.
Mhm.
And you're knowing that, then you can tell the world what it is. You can tell the world that if you want that mountain to go into the sea, it'll go into the sea. If you want to walk on water, you can walk on water. There's no limitation. That's what that inner God's going to tell you. There's no limitation. You decide what you want. You tell your world what it is, and that will set in motion a law. Now, be patient for it to take manifestation and keep working on breaking down the laws of the world. When you're faced with, say you go out for a run and you're faced with, oh, I'm tired. Know that that's a law that it has you have set in motion, that the world told you that's the way it was, and you accepted that, and that became a law to your being. So now you're going to reject that. You're going to say, oh, well, the body feels tired, but the body doesn't know what it is. I tell the body what it is. I'm the one who decides what the body is. And now I'm not going to accept that the body has to get tired, that the body has to decay. I'm not accepting those things anymore. Those laws I reject. So there has to be a rejection of the old laws so that the new laws that you set in motion can come into effect.
and always keep in mind the difference between personal will and personal self. You say it beautifully here about the invisible spiritual self operating on God's grace with goodwill. That can be your test.
Yes.
Is this of God?
Well, right. Now that's another good point is if it's for selfish purposes,
Yeah.
you're under the laws of the world. Because in God's world, there's nothing selfish. There is only being constructive and being fruitful and being successful. And that's not selfish. Selfishness is wanting things for yourself. I want that car today for me. I want to live in comfort. That selfishness restricts you because that's what the world has told us, that we need to be selfish. We need to get things for ourselves. On our invisible self, our true invisible self, there's no selfishness because God gave us everything, and all we have to do is let it out into expression by setting the law in motion that produces it. I am success because I am the child of God and I have everything God has. Everything that's in God's divine mind is available to me in this now moment, in this eternal moment. And I no longer am under the laws of selfishness. I don't need to be selfish anymore. I can have everything I want without being selfish. Again, this might seem contradictory, but God wants you to have everything. And when you realize your potential, then you want to give what you have to the world. You want to share it with everyone because you realize it's infinite, that there's no limit to whatever it is you want to bring out. There's no end to it. So you can give it freely and your selfishness goes away. So you begin to look at selfishness and the ego. See, the ego says you got to get things for yourself because the ego believes you're the body and the mind. And if you're just the body and mind, then you need to survive. But you're the invisible self. There's no need to survive because you're eternal. Your invisible self is eternal and never ends and is always producing an outward experience eternally. There's not going to ever be an end to your outward experience. It's going to change. It's going to seem like you're in this world one day and in another world another day. And that's all going to be according to what law you put in motion through your knowing. And so that is going to be an eternal experience, ever changing, yet ever replenished. Jesus said, "Follow me in the regeneration. And when the Son of Man sits on his throne, you will sit on the 12 thrones and judge the 12 tribes." And what that means is that life eternally regenerates. It doesn't produce the same thing over and over again. It comes in infinite variety, ever new, updating, not decaying, not dying, not going away, just renewing and always changing into a perfect form. When we realize that, then that's the law we set in motion, and that becomes the law of our being. In the meantime, we've got to go from this being under the law of man to being under the law of God, which is our law. God wants what we want. God wants us to be happy and successful. And because God is life, and that's what life is. Life is success when we let it be itself, instead of trying to control it with the outer thinking and outer actions. Instead of trying to control it from that point, we get back into the soul and commune with the spirit and work hand in hand with the spirit. And then we realize God wants us to live in a mansion. God wants us to be happy. God wants us to have good relationships. God wants us to be at peace and to be full of joy. All the good things of life, to be around beauty. All those things God wants for us. And that's what we want. When we finally realize that God has already given us those things, then we can set those laws in motion for our own experience.
So one of the things you were saying is the truth is peace, joy, abundance, youth, beauty. This is the soil we nurture, and this is how we grow into beautiful beings. This is how we live with ourself at the helm. I think that's really beautiful. I have a question.
Okay.
Okay. In chapter 6, you gave us a tool, the tool of pausing. Every time you pause, you increase your awareness, and you can assess your situation better. Right in here, do you want to read it? You are talking about this would be a good tool to come out of chapter 7. Watch, then listen carefully to what you are thinking or intending. Our attitude should be we cannot wait to see what beautiful life God will express next. Do you want to read that? Because it actually ends beautifully. This is beautiful.
Okay. Okay, so where were we here?
You can pick it up wherever you want.
Okay, let's do it. Watch, then listen carefully to what you are thinking or intending. Okay, we begin to watch. We talked about that in the last chapter, how we watch our thinking, we watch our intentions, we watch our attitudes, we watch our feelings. We start to watch everything we do.
And the pause was the tool.
And, right.
Yeah.
And as we watch that, we take time and pause and evaluate what it is that we're seeing. So we don't try and stop those things, but we do evaluate them. We look at them and we realize that though a lot of that stuff that's going on in our minds and feelings and actions are driven by mortal thinking, by accepting mortal ideas. And so those pauses, then we can readjust and go, now I'm going in a new direction. Now I'm setting a new life in motion under this wonderful thing called life, this wonderful thing called law. Our attitude should be, we cannot wait to see what beautiful life God will express next. So our attitude towards life should be excitement. When you start to be excited about getting up in the morning and doing your meditations, you know you're starting to get on the right path. When you're excited about what life is going to bring for you, because now you know you're setting new things in motion, then you start to know that you're going in the right direction and that it is going to reveal itself. Our attitude should be, we are now consciously letting all of infinity out into expression. Consciously. Not just sitting by and watching life go by. We're not going to do that anymore. That's what got us into trouble. Our unconscious living, in other words, we're just living and doing what the world is suggesting, trying to get things, trying to survive. Now we're a new being. We're a new creature. And but it's done consciously. And we're consciously letting all of infinity into expression. All of God's grace is moving through me now. It always has been, yet now I am consciously aware of it. See, God's grace has always been here, always active, always ready to help us do whatever we want. We just didn't know what we wanted, and so we listened to the world and ended up with a world we didn't really want because we just weren't being conscious of our life and actively choosing and actively setting in motion the laws of our own experience. It always has been, yet I am consciously aware of it and consciously allowing it. So I'm consciously allowing God's grace to move through me. And that is that intelligence and activity and presence that is always with me, always moving into manifestation. I am the master of my own law pertaining to my body and world. What I decide I am becomes the law of my being, the law of my feelings, the law of my thinking, the law of my body, and the law of the world I live in. I always have been, yet now I'm consciously aware of it and letting it operate for the good of all things, all places, all conditions, and for all people. So now I share that with the world, with everything that's part of my experience, because all of my experience is what I am. There's no me and a world. I am the world I live in. I am the law, and that is my world. It is not our personal will. Rather, now we're surfing God's grace. Our personal will is the will in the thinking mind that thinks it needs things for itself, that thinks it wants things for itself, or thinks that there's certain things it doesn't want. It has an aversion to certain things. That is the personal will, and that will not accomplish it. It will, anything that will accomplishes is temporary. It's not permanent. I am now emanating my highest good for all. When I realize I have my highest good, then it automatically is something I offer to everyone, because I am infinite. I am God's child, and I have all of God's infinity, and I can let that infinity consciously move through me, and that takes away all selfishness, all desire for something for the personal self. And that is a joy. When you feel that feeling, you will be full of joy, because you'll know that God never designed lack, never designed limitation. My beloved higher self guides me through the matrix of the laws of life, producing the highest good for all. Okay, so this higher self, this self that knows it's the child of God, this inner God revealing itself through the soul, will help us move out of this world of mortal laws into the law of perfect being, which I set in motion. Okay. All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right. I think that's it for today. And that was chapter 7 of You Are Divinely Made. That's our book.
Thank you for joining us. We're so
you.
grateful for it.
Yes, wonderful to be here. Okay. All right. Till next time. Chapter 8 is coming up next.